Slowly changing dimensions in your data warehouse. One of the most critical items when designing your dimension tables is the concept of slowly changing dimensions. What do we mean by that? Well, some dimensions don't change rapidly, but when they do, they can have a major impact on your reporting. Remember, the entire point of this data warehouse is to report on our data, after all. Hypothetical example. We have a salesperson located in New York. Let's say his name is John, just for hypothetical situations. John lives in New York, and he starts working on January 1st, 2018. And he's working in New York, and he's selling in New York only. Midway through the year, let's say July 4th, 2018, John moves to St. Louis. And then he's strictly selling in Missouri at that point. What do we do? If we were to update his record, his one record, his sales record, to say his address is now St. Louis and his sales are now occurring in Missouri, what would happen to all of the data that he sold in New York from January up till July 4th? All of a sudden, all of those sales would be attributed to Missouri, and that's inaccurate. That's inaccurate data. So the concept of slowly changing dimensions gives us the ability to change something about our dimension, in this case our staff, without altering the ability to correctly report on the data. So in order to prepare for slowly changing dimensions when we're designing our dimension table, we have to put slowly changing dimensions into one of three types: type 0, type 1, and type 2. Type 0 slowly changing dimensions do not change. What do I mean by that? We will never update these fields. This is something like a social security number or a date of birth. So when we're running our ETL processes at night, these fields should never have to be looked at for slowly changing dimensions. They will never be changed. Type 1, this is okay to update on the fly directly on the record. Whereas with the address, we don't want to just update the existing record. These type 1, we're okay to update those. What's an example of that? Something like a phone number. We're never going to be really tracking metrics based on the phone number used. If it's a contact number, then we're okay to update that on the record itself. And lastly, type 2, this is one where it's neither okay to just ignore a change, nor is it okay to update the existing record. What do? We create a brand new record from scratch. And what we use to do this so that we know that the new record is what is active, we use start date and end date. We use those columns to specify when we have entered a new record and when it is valid from. So in general, when we create a record for the first time, the start date is going to be the day that it's created, make up a day like January 1st, 2018, and the end date is going to be infinite, something like 12/31/9999. And until a change has come, like to John's address that we spoke about, it's going to stay 12/31/99. But when that change comes, our ETL process will scratch it out and it'll change it to be maybe that date that we spoke about, July 3rd, 2018. That's when it's going to end. And then the next record, the start date, will be July 4th, 2018, and it will have the end date of 12/31/9999. And that is how we know that this record is now the active one, but we're still able to tie all of our sales and transactions to the surrogate key that was created during this record, and we don't have to lose any of our metric tracking. So in order to prepare our dimension tables for slowly changing dimensions, we have to remember when and where to use those metadata columns that we talked about in the last nugget. Then, when we actually get into SSIS and ETL processes, that's when we'll walk through how to actually build the slowly changing dimension updates. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.